Some disturbing news. Fraudsters in India are younger, smarter, and start dabbling in their nefarious activities early in their career. That's according to KPMG's Global Profiles of Fraudsters report. CNBC TV 18's Prerna, Baruah and Arundathi have the highlights of the report.
Fraud is apparently turning into a young man's game in India, of young persons if you're inclined to be politically correct. The global consultancy's latest report, titled Global Profiles of Fraudsters, says that 32% of Indian fraudsters belong to the 26 to 35 age bracket. That's much higher than the 14% average in the rest of the world. But what's more disturbing is that these Indian fraudsters turn to fraud much earlier in their chosen legitimate careers, within 1 to 4 years of starting in them. Globally, people tend to wait a while longer to establish themselves before turning to fraud. But the reasons fraudsters choose a life of fraud is pretty uniform across the world and is one of the oldest reasons in the book, greed. The KPMG report says 77% of Indian fraudsters are motivated by greed, a motivation that 60% of the world's fraudsters share. So what's the most common type of fraud? Misappropriation of assets, commonly called embezzlement. 43% of India's frauds take this form, just 100 basis points below the global average. And the main reason for this, at least in India, is that organizations have weak internal controls. According to KPMG's survey, weak internal controls were a contributing factor in 54% of the cases. This is compounded by the fact that either anti-fraud protocols are weak or in some cases non-existent, meaning most frauds go undetected, let alone unchecked. Technology, however, is not the answer, because fraudsters are often tech-savvy and use technology to aid them in their endeavors. In many cases, this is the very technology put in place to hinder such fraud. Again, Indian fraudsters score high in this area. Tech-enabled fraud stands at 33% in India against the global 24%. This means that organizations in India will have to seriously beef up not just tech security, but also physical protocols if they are to stay one step ahead. In New Delhi with Prerna, Baruah, in Mumbai, Arundathi.